there. Welcome back to the Fix-It Shop here at Randy's Hardware in Timberville, Virginia. I'm Rachel, and we're continuing our hardware alphabet series with the letter B. Today, our tool isn't a hand tool or a power tool, but it's a very useful tool to have around the house, and we have a lot of these at the hardware store. Our tool for the letter B is a bucket. A bucket is a container with high sides, a flat bottom, and a handle. Most often they're used to carry things. This bucket is made out of a sturdy plastic and has a metal handle with a plastic grip. Plastic is a relatively new material, and I bet there are some grown-ups who remember a time before plastic was around. The plastic bucket came into hardware stores in 1967, and initially they had a metal lid, but soon after we got a plastic lid. And here in the hardware store you can buy this plastic bucket. Even has our name on it, Randy's Do It Best Hardware. And you can get a plastic lid to go with it. Just like our awl from last week, a bucket is a very old, very useful tool. Humans have needed something to carry things in since we figured out that we can't carry that much in our hands and arms. Throughout history, buckets have been made of various things. Sometimes they were made out of leather, probably stitched together with an awl, or wood, or metal. Firefighters used to use leather buckets to help fight fires, leading to the phrase bucket brigade, where water was handed down a line of firefighters to help extinguish fires. Emergency responders still use this method of moving water in places where earthquakes have happened, where fire trucks can't get through. Wooden buckets were a common household staple in America from the time of colonization. Wooden buckets could either be watertight or not. Wet buckets were useful for milking the cow or getting water from the well. Dry buckets would be good for carrying grain out to livestock or holding vegetables from the garden. Usually wooden buckets would have a rope as a handle. Metal was also used as a bucket material. On wooden buckets, bands of metal held the wooden panels together, but buckets were sometimes made entirely of metal. Some people even carried their lunch in a tin pail, and pail is another word for bucket. Tin and aluminum were a popular metal for buckets before galvanized steel came along in the 1830s, and a lot of people still use galvanized buckets today. Buckets have a lot of uses. Around the hardware store, we use them to store bits and bobs of hardware that we have left over. We sell paint in lots of different sizes of buckets. And we even sell empty buckets like this, so you can take them home and put whatever you want in them. Some people like to paint a galvanized bucket or use plain buckets as decorations around their house. This is a 5-gallon bucket. It's the biggest bucket we sell in the hardware store. Sometimes you can buy paint in a bucket this big. Sometimes you can get cleaner, sometimes even rat killer. But it's very important to remember that if you have small children in your home, you need to be very careful around 5-gallon buckets. Little kids with their big heads sometimes can tip in and aren't able to get out. So there's a warning on every 5-gallon bucket to make sure little children don't get in buckets. So make sure you keep a lid on it or keep it out of the way for small children. I use a bucket a lot around my house. I have one bucket that I use to feed the chickens with every morning, and I have another bucket in my basement that's filled with paint for projects. Plus, we've got fun beach buckets that we take to the beach to build sandcastles. I've even used a 5-gallon bucket as a chair. You just turn it around and sit on the top. How do you use buckets at your home? What kind of bucket do you use the most? Don't you think the bucket is a very useful tool? Thanks for joining me today to learn more about the letter B and a bucket. I'll see you next week when we learn about the letter C. Can't wait to see you then. Bye.